Hi, everybody. This is Brian Meek, Director of Training and Safety at Kansas Municipal Utilities. I'm here today to provide you an update on respirator use during the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, in the last month, OSHA has put out several new guidance memos on respirator use and some things that are changing as we go through this fluid situation. So I thought it'd be a good time to talk about all four of those memos and really condense them into one quick training session, with the last memo being released on April 8th. That was this last Wednesday, April 8th of 2020. So just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of the changes that OSHA is recommending during this pandemic with the use of respirators, and especially with the use of fit testing. So the first thing that OSHA says, and all of these things I've discussed with the Kansas Department of Labor, and they are responsible for, they recommend actually following all OSHA guidelines. So the KDOL, Kansas Department of Labor Safety Group, is on board with what OSHA is recommending. So all of these are really, really good things that we can follow here in Kansas for our employees. So the first thing that OSHA says is that they recommend that you implement CDC and OSHA strategies for optimizing the supply of N95 filtering face piece respirators and prioritizing their use. OSHA recommends employers follow existing CDC guidelines, including taking measures to conserve supplies of these respirators while safeguarding workers. One such measure is that employees may provide workers with another respirator of equal or higher protection, such as an N99 or N100 filtering face piece, a reusable elastometric respirator with appropriate filters or cartridges, or a PAPR, powered air purifying respirator. Employees should also assess their engineering controls, work practices, and administrative controls on an ongoing basis to identify any changes they can make to decrease the need for N95s or other full-face respirators. When reassessing these types of controls and practices, employers should, for example, consider whether it is possible to increase the use of wet methods or portable local exhaust systems, or to move operators outside. In some instances, an employer may also consider taking steps to temporarily suspend non-essential operations. Now, when performing fit tests, people that are wearing respirators still must complete an initial fit test for the same model, style, and size respirator that you're required to wear for protection, whether it's against COVID-19 or for your job that you're doing. But given the additional concerns regarding a shortage of fit testing kits and testing solutions, employers are further encouraged to take necessary steps to prioritize the use of fit testing equipment to protect employees who must use respirators for high hazard procedures. So what they're saying is that if you are in a high hazard area and you need an initial fit test, then that should be performed before people that do lower hazard work. And that is assuming that you can't get your hands on all the fit testing instruments or equipment that you need in order to do it, such as the Bittrex or the acetate solution and those type of things. Now, OSHA is temporarily suspending the annual fit testing requirement for N95 filtering face piece respirators, and that's to preserve and prioritize the supply of respirators for use in situations where they are required to be worn. So you have to have an initial fit test. However, if your annual fit test is coming due, it is not required during this time. And I talked with Kansas Department of Labor about what we consider this period of time right now during this pandemic. And basically, as long as Kansas is in a declared state of emergency, these guidelines apply. So right now, the governor has issued this declared state of emergency, so these guidelines apply, that you do not need, it's not required that you get an annual fit test in order to maintain your qualification to wear a respirator. You still have to have your initial fit test, but your annual fit test does not have to be completed. However, you must perform a user seal check at each donning to make sure that you're getting an adequate seal from that respirator. And you can look at OSHA 1910.134 or your respiratory control procedure, and you should have steps on how to do that fit check or seal check every time that you use your device. You still need to do that every time because that's going to protect you. You also should conduct that sort of fit test if you observe any physical changes in your physical condition that could affect respirator fit. Anything that may change, your composition or your size that you need or anything like that. And if your face shape has changed since your last fit test, right? Because you're not doing that annual fit test, and you're not getting a good facial seal with your respirator, then you need to consider. First you need to inform your supervisor that you're not getting a good seal with your respirator, and you should look at other respirators or doing some sort of fit check in order to make sure that you can still get the adequate protection that you need. Now, if you can't fit test a respirator because you don't have the supplies, or if a respirator model is out of stock, then contact the manufacturer, whoever it is that makes your respirators, and see if they recommend a different model that fits similarly to the model used by previous employees. And again, OSHA is going to not require you to have additional annual fit checks on those new types of respirators or those other models of respirators, as long as they're considered by the manufacturer to be acceptable replacements. Now, what about the extended use of respirators or N95s? So in the event that you have to use it for an extended period of time or reuse them, right, the same worker is permitted to extend the use or reuse of the respirator as long as the respirator maintains its structural and functional integrity and the filter material is not physically damaged, soiled, or contaminated. Okay. Extended use is preferred over reuse due to contact transmission risk associated with donning and doffing during reuse. When respirators are being reused, employers should pay particular attention to workers' proper storage of the full face respirator in between periods of reuse. So if you're using it multiple days or multiple shifts, you need to make sure that you are storing it properly in between those shifts so that it doesn't get damaged or contaminated. Users should perform a seal check each time they don a respirator and should not use a respirator which they cannot use do a successful seal check, just like we talked about earlier. If any structural or functional integrity or any part of that respirator is compromised, it needs to be thrown away. If successful user seal check cannot be performed, then another respirator should be tried to achieve that user seal check. If reuse is necessary, an appropriate sequence for donning and doffing procedures should be used to prevent contamination. There are procedures online. The CDC has a PPE donning and doffing sequence. It's called the CDC Donning and Doffing PPE Sequence 508, and you can find it on the web, that has a procedure for you on how to properly don and doff respirators. So that's being able to reuse or use extended respirators for an extended period of time. The last thing I want to talk about is the use of expired N95s. So in the event that you have an N95 respirator and it's not available to have one that is not expired, and you've shown a good faith effort to acquire the respirators, then you can use respirators that are beyond the manufacturer's recommended shelf life. Okay. You need to be notified, so an employer needs to notify any worker that's using an expired N95 before they use it. Anybody that's required to purchase or use PPE shouldn't commingle those products that are past their manufacturer's recommended shelf life with items that are within their shelf life. So in your warehouse, you need to segregate expired respirators from ones that aren't, even if they aren't N95s, if they're a different model. Take anything that's expired, you can use that now, but keep it separate. That way, when this is over and we get back to using, having a good supply and being able to use all non-expired respirators, we won't have some of those expired respirators mixed in. We also need to make sure that we visually inspect, and each time we use any expired respirators, they're visually inspected before issue and then before use, so that we know that it hasn't been compromised. You have to really look at the straps, the nose bridge, and the nose foam material, because that's what expires on these respirators, and that's what's important to see before we use it, just to make sure we're getting the right protection. When we have these expired N95s available from your own stock, right, talk to the manufacturer prior to using them. So go through, find all these. If that's all you have, you can use them, but you need to contact the manufacturer first and see if there's any testing or anything that needs to be done prior to using it. That's everything I have for today. I appreciate you listening. If you need more information, we keep our webpage updated with the latest COVID-19 information. You can go to kmunet.org and it'll be right there on the homepage. If you have specific questions that need to be addressed, contact either your local KMU trainer, or you can contact me here at KMU and I can help you out with whatever you need during this time. And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll keep you updated with more information and more training. Have a good day.